Are you insane because you went through these things, or did you go through these things because you're insane? Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ify and this is Ify's Beats. If you're joining me for the first time, thank you, and if you're a returning viewer, thank you again. On today's video, I am going to be reviewing another book. I do not feel like it's had like my last review had any real uptake, but I am doing this more for myself because if you watched my 2026 resolutions, I want to start reading more books. It's one of my goals, and I've been able to read a second book in January of 2026, which is a big deal because most times when I make these sort of resolutions any time of the year, I start reading and I'm able to read one book. I'm not able to read a second book. I pick one up and then I spend months not reading it, and eventually that's the end of that resolution until I make another one. So I'm really happy. This is like a big deal that I'm able to read a second book. So based on what the thumbnail and the caption says, on today's book review, I am reviewing None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. It's a book. It was released in 2023, and I think it's more of a psychological I think it's pushed as a psychological thriller, but it's more of a true crime. Well, it's an older book, so I think it's okay to give spoilers, but if you've not read it, there might be a little bit of spoilers here and there. But I'm just going to start by reading the summary. So, celebrating her 45th birthday at her local pub, popular podcaster Alex Summer crosses paths with an unassuming woman called Josie Fair. Josie, it turns out, is also celebrating her 45th birthday. They're in fact birthday twins. A few days later, Alex and Josie bump into each other. This time outside Alex's children's school. Josie has been listening to Alex's podcast and thinks she might be an interesting subject for her series. She tells Alex, on the cusp of great changes in her life. Josie's life appears to be strange and complicated, and although Alex finds her unsettling, she can't quite resist the temptation to keep making the podcast. Slowly, she starts to realize that Josie has been hiding some very dark secrets. But as quickly as she arrived, Josie disappears. Only then does Alex discover that Josie has left a terrible and terrifying legacy in her wake, and that Alex has become the subject of her own true crime podcast, with her life and her family's lives under mortal threat. Who is Josie Fair and what has she done? Just as the summary says, the book follows Josie Fair and Alex Summer. Alex Summer is a podcaster. She has a very successful podcast where she interviews women who have been able to make a great change in their lives and, just turn things around, very inspirational stories. And she bumps into Josie Fair during their 45th birthday celebration. They both happen to be birthday twins and they happen to celebrate it at the same pub. Josie Fair gets sort of, obsessed. She feels like Alex and herself have a bond, being that they were born on the same day at the same hospital. And anyway, they meet again and she tells Alex to do a podcast about her, that even though her life does seem ordinary, a lot has happened in it, and she's on the cusp of a great change because she plans on turning her life around. So Alex is winding down her current podcast series and she's thinking of starting something new. So this catches her at a good time. She is really interested and she decides to take Josie up on her offer. So the book just mostly follows them making the podcast series, the events that transpire. It also cuts to interviews or documentary episodes because the podcast is eventually made into a documentary. So there are different interjections of the documentary in the future, the interviews from various people in the future. It's a really very good book. I really liked it. I feel like I give it a 4.5 stars. This was a great second pick for me because, as I said, as someone who's trying to get into the habit of reading again, this second book, I was looking for something that was not too long. On my tablet, it was about 275 pages of reading for me. So I felt that that was quite short enough for me to get through. And it has taken me, I think, about 2 weeks to finish the book, which I think is really good. And the story was intriguing enough to keep my attention span. So as someone who doom scrolls a lot, it meant that even while I'm doom scrolling, I would remember that I have this interesting book somewhere that I can read. And I think it's really helped. So I'm hoping that my third pick would be really, really good. So it was a really good book. I like the style of the writing in the sense that it starts out really innocent. You feel pity for Josie in the beginning. She doesn't feel very abnormal. But each time they would cut to interviews of other people in the documentary, it gave you a different feeling, because I was always wondering, like, why do people not perceive her to be a good person, And even at the end of the book, I was like, okay, maybe some of them were biased due to the fact that, oh, it's now out that she did some horrible things. But I don't even think so, because even the people Alexis asks about her before the book, the documentary, and all the things she does comes out, no one has anything good to say. And it's sort of just having those random people saying these random things that don't paint her in a good light. It's jarring compared to the way she views herself, almost like this helpless victim who is just going through the motions of life. So Josie, to give a bit of background, some of the interesting things that happened in her life without giving too much spoilers, started dating a 42-year-old man at 16, left and started living with him at 18. He was a married man, so basically his ex-wife left to Canada with her boys, and so that's basically it. So it's like you're looking at this person who's with a pedophile and you're thinking, oh my God, she had this terrible experience. But each time they cut to those interviews, she's not painted in a good light. And you're like, but this person is the victim. And then it continues to build up, up till the point where, you're peeling back layers and you're realizing that this person is not very sane. She does a lot of, unhinged things, like taking stuff from Alex's house and keeping it in her underwear drawer at home. Those just give you an idea that this person isn't very sane, despite the fact that the story written from their point of view, she looks like this helpless, mom who is trying to change her life in her early 40s or mid 40s, sorry. Yeah, so that's it about Josie Fair. But for Alex Summer, on the other hand, I understood her. There were times where I was like, ma'am, you have to get a grip. You have to be a lot more assertive. You can say no to this person. She doesn't have to be in your house. There's a time where Josie runs away from home, claims her husband has battered her, and she spends a week almost controlling Alex, and Alex feels pressure to let her stay. And I'm like, oh, you can just say no. And it really does put into perspective how when you're a people pleaser, it can put you in a lot of trouble, because you could put yourself in harm's way. And aside Alex just generally being a people pleaser, there's also the fact that she was afraid to spoil her relationship with Josie just so that she can get all her podcast episodes. So I think that's something else she was also thinking about when she sort of kept on bending to Josie's will. And another thing is she overshared with Josie, and I understood that because producing the podcast, it felt like, oh, but Josie is sharing so much of herself. She's talking about how she was groomed, how she's been with a pedophile, how she's sharing so much of her life. So I understood her wanting to sort of share something in return, and she makes the mistake of telling Josie that her husband is having benders. He's basically an alcoholic at this point, because he's going out to drink after work, and he drinks to a stupor and doesn't return home and goes to sleep in a hotel and then comes back. And obviously for a married man with 2 kids, that's not a very good look. And then Josie starts to actively compare her marriage with Alex's marriage, and they are not necessarily close, in the sense that you're married to a pedophile that cheated on his wife, and although you have narrations that were proven to be wrong at the end, but it's like I don't think you can compare it to a man who has been dedicated to his family but has an alcohol problem. I don't know, it just seemed very different. And this sort of annoys Alex, the constant comparison and trying to say, oh man, and trying to make her Walter is the husband of Josie, and Josie trying to make her husband Walter and Alex's husband Nathan, trying to put them on the same pedestal. But once again, because Alex doesn't stand firm, she lets this continue. She doesn't necessarily sort of tell Josie that you need to stop doing this, making these comparisons where we are not remotely the same. And then there's also the question of Alex not being a very watchful mom and being a people pleaser, also wanting to complete her project, this podcast project. She's letting the stranger whom everybody thinks is weird, even her child who's 6 thought this woman was weird, be around her family consistently is very worrisome. I think that she didn't make a very good choice, especially as a mom with young kids, allowing her. But I think the thing is, she had sympathy for her, which is when you hear her version of things, the story she was telling, her husband sexually abusing her daughters, sexually abusing somebody else, even though these, don't pan out, even though everything doesn't seem that way. But I understand how hearing those stories, you feel bad for that kind of person and you don't want to be another person who is doing them dirty, and you being a people pleaser, it's easy to keep bending to their will. But now you can see how that person is using this supposed evil things that have happened in their life to manipulate you. So I understood it, but I really liked it. I found it very interesting. It was such a good read. So if you're someone like me who is embarking on a journey to start reading more, I think this is something that you would like. If you like true crime, I think this is something that you would like. It's not too long. It's written very easy. Like, I liked how it was written, especially for someone who is at the verge of falling off on continuing their resolutions. This was a good book to keep me on track, so I really, really liked it. I'm probably going to look at other books from the same author. I've seen a couple of reviews of her other books, and they're apparently really good. I think it would make a very good show on Netflix. I don't know how they would write it, but I think it would be good. I like the characters. And at the end, there's 2 pages at the end where Josie sort of alludes that these evil things they attributed to her weren't all done by her, and everyone isn't being truthful. But then there's also the idea that maybe her brain is fractured and she's not remembering things correctly, but she's definitely not okay in the head. So I also like the fact that there was a death. The author mentions how she struggled to keep the death of that big character in the book, and someone had to tell her to please keep it in. And I like that, because it shows that when you take risks, sometimes it can have real consequences. Be careful with the people you're letting into your personal space, into your life, because not everybody is right in the head. I think him passing on was not nice, but I think it was a good lesson for Alex Summer, because I honestly think she took a risk, because the times Josie showed signs, the missing things, everyone commenting negative things about her, and she wanting to not hurt this person's feelings and also wanting to continue her project, sort of those things dominated her common sense and her sense of survival, her instincts to survive and escape. She kept on ignoring the red flags. Another thing I think I would like to talk about is the fact that I like when Alex's Summer was thinking of the fact that, sometimes people are victims and perpetrators. Like, you can be both. It's not a mutually exclusive thing, because when she starts to unpeel this many layers of Josie Fair, she gets to a point where she's wondering, is it that Josie Fair had a hard life because she was such a bad person, or did having a hard life make her a bad person, in the sense that, yes, her mom wasn't necessarily a great mother, her husband was a pedophile, what else, she nothing great was happening in her life. But was she sort of, especially you can't blame her for who her mom is, But especially for Walter, her husband, was she attracted to this man just simply because the man groomed her and she didn't have a nice mom, or was she attracted to this man in addition to just being like someone who was psychologically unwell? I think it brings up that question because, sometimes when things happen, everyone blames trauma. My mom didn't treat me right, I didn't get a lot of attention, blah blah blah. And then sometimes you're like, but some people pass through that same experience and they have a different outcome. So is it possible that you might have had a hand to play in the outcome of your life? And it's a very finicky opinion, mostly because it's like, oh, but this person was such a young child who was groomed by a 42-year-old man. So can you really say that? How much control can a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old have over a grown man, even if she's a psychopath? It's like, it makes you think a lot, because a lot of times you see certain situations that make you wonder which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Like, are you insane because you went through these things, or did you go through these things because you're insane? It was very thought-provoking in that sense. So I really like that aspect of it because it's such a conundrum. It's something that comes up a lot of times in a lot of situations. Children, difficult teenagers, have terrible experiences. And when they tell you sometimes, especially when you're looking at the experience now that they are adults, and it feels like they're not taking any responsibility, and sometimes you want to be empathetic towards their situation, and then sometimes you're like, but sometimes when you've experienced the unruliness that they are exhibiting, you're not sure how to take it. And with people with more empathy think, oh yes, this should be handled with better care, they should go and they should seek counseling. There are other ways for these people for tumultuous teenagers to be taken out of, to be rehabilitated in a way, while some people just feel like they've tried their best, and however the teenager turns out, honestly, they've tried and this is who the teenager was born to be. They cannot be saved. It comes up a lot of times, and I think if you're experiencing the teenager in real time, sometimes it's like you might have more pity, but when you're experiencing the adult version here, it's harder to have pity because like you are an adult now. At what point do you take responsibility for your actions? So yeah, I don't know what my third book would be. I haven't picked one, but I'm definitely going to pick one today. And I'm hoping that I'm going to make another video. Honestly, this video is more for myself. Just so that this type of videos, this genres, like book reviews, they're more for myself because I'm hoping to look at the end of 2026 and say to myself, oh my god, Ify, you read so number of books. But anyways, if you've watched up to this point, thank you very much. Please like, subscribe, share, engage, comment, and watch my other book review, which was Dream Count by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. See you on my next video. Bye guys.